What's up, guys? This is Dave from The Disorderly. I'm joined once again by our best buddy, Mr. Andrew Volpe. Pretty Italian, Volpe, you know. He's got a lot of Italian mob stories and his crazy dad and mom growing up in Philly and dad grew up in New York and Italian as hell. Angry, belligerent, Italian.
Yeah, I mean,
So this
that's
is,
more my dad's side. My mom's side is like not, crazy New York stories.
yeah, your mom, I wouldn't know she was Italian.
My mom,
you know?
no, my mom's Irish. My dad's where.
Oh,
all
that's
the
right.
Italian
Okay,
comes
that's
from.
why she's pretty easygoing. But your dad, no, yeah, not at all. But we got this one years in the making. Absolutely, like this is the Irishman. You know what I mean? It's a movie that took God knows how long to make.
It was always rumored for so many years about this dream project that they were never gonna make, and thanks again, Netflix just making shit happen because they have all the money and they need content, baby.
Well, there you go. You know what I mean? So, you go get Scorsese, you go get Pacino, you go get Pesci. You get De Niro, because De Niro I feel like he was more of the spearhead to the project, and he fell in love with the book. 2004, I think, is the original release, written by Charles Brandt, kind of a former medical malpractice attorney. Was a prosecutor, I think. He's done a lot of crazy stuff in the law. He's very high respected. I read the book, as we, claim in the title. He goes on quite a bit of jags, stroking himself and trying to kind of let you know that he means serious business and that he's not some schmuck that would be conned by a dying old mobster. So he really stresses highly in the book that he's very well established with an incredible reputation, and that he would not print a fabricated, insane story like our boy Frank Sheeran kind of gave him. So kind of the story goes that Frank was having some real troubles in prison, as you do. 6'4" frame, but basically shrank to being 6 foot tall because of spinal issues. Brandt comes in, acting on behalf of Frank, represents him, tries to get him some, medical, probationary help from the government. You know what I mean? Saying, if you release Frank early, then you won't be on the foot. You won't have to foot the bill for the incredible amount of surgery and recovery and things like that. So basically, he kind of petitioned to have him released early from prison based on medical necessities and things like that. So in return, it's said that he kind of decided to give him this incredible story and open up, and it went on to become this big bestseller. A lot of people dispute it. A lot of people, say there's no substantial evidence backing up any of these claims. I'm sure we'll kind of work our way through them, but it was enough for Bobby De Niro. You know what I mean? So, Bobby De Niro believes it. There's this guy who's like, I'm trying to remember his name. This will be one of many times where I can't remember someone's name, and just you're gonna have to deal with it. There's so many goddamn people.
I was gonna say there's only like 100 people involved. Either
and once again, and we talked about it. Like this was the most, like, Charlie, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like my notes look like the meme of Charlie in the mailroom. Looking for, what was the guy's name? Not Papa Giorgio. Who's he looking for?
Crazy Joe. Crazy Joe.
No, man. No, who is Charlie looking for in Always Sunny?
Oh, I've never actually seen
that doesn't
that
exist.
Episode.
Oh my god, are you serious? Anyway, my notes written in a Gmail draft look like a frigging, a serial bomber. You know what I mean? It looks like Ted Kaczynski's scratchings. You know what I mean? It's just mobster A kills mobster B. You know what I mean? So it's no different from anyway. It's just more extensive this time.
Well, I mean, we both had this love of like crazy conspiracies, but I feel like it's like we just like hit the mother load with this one. It's like the conspiracy, like I thought I was smart when I was watching it because I was like, this is kind of like, fucking gangster Forrest Gump, and I thought it like felt so proud for such a clever pun, and then I like looked on the internet and everyone was calling it the same thing, but it really is. It's kind of like the fucking mob story that connects a whole bunch of other things. Like just when you thought it wasn't crazy enough, like let's throw in the JFK assassination. Like,
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's a remarkable story. I want to believe it. You know what I mean? And who the hell am I to say that he didn't murder all these people and carry the rifles that were used in the assassination of JFK and do all the insanity that he kind of claims to have been involved in. But, do you want to kind of talk about, I mean, how do you want to tackle this thing? Because my notes are all over the place. It's like trying to find interesting nuggets that were kind of left out from the book that are they're left out in the movie, but in the book. I mean, I don't know, like just kind of watching, because I read the book and I've read the most up-to-date version of the book, which, he's re-released several times.
Has he added new chapters like every few years or something?
Yeah, because what he does, to juice the sales a little bit, but yeah, but also people die and then more things can come out, you know what I mean? So he'll get more people to talk to him, or he'll get, he'll be kind of allowed to reveal certain names.
Right.
Who knows, man? But it is interesting. I mean, the epilogue is like a giant chunk of the book. You know what I mean? Like, there's the original story, that kind of goes on and concludes almost, pretty much with kind of the Hoffa murder and everything.
Was Sharon dead by the time the book came out? The original?
Yeah, so he died in 2003, and then it was released in 2004.
Okay.
So I think there's like interviews and a photo of him holding up like a manuscript of it or whatever, and I'm pretty sure that's correct, but so the poor man never really I'm not really
the
sure
poor hitman.
Well, like I think the book you do feel, like he's not a sympathetic character exactly, but
I mean, he seemed like he was kind of like regretful towards the end of his life. Like that's what the whole back chunk of the movie seemed like it was trying to stress, was like, he kind of felt like he was paying a penance for his sins of the past. And wasn't he like, I didn't feel like it came through in the movie as much, but wasn't he like way more Catholic or religious, especially towards the end?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the book kind of explains how, his mother was super devotedly, religious, and his dad, not the most nurturing and lovable.
Was there some
character.
beatings in there?
Oh man, he used to just beat the shit out of him. You know what I mean? Right. So like he talked, because in the book you really learn from a child up through his teens, up
like
through the 20s, like
life.
You really you get a good scope of who this man is. And he basically like his dad would, he'd get into mischief, as we all do, when we're young or whatever, and his dad would just, when he got home and his dad knew about it or whatever, he would just, because I think his dad was like his school's janitor or something horrible. Like if that's not a shitty enough life sentence, like, you know what I mean? Your dad's the janitor. So like one story he tells where he stole like some Limburger cheese from their house and then put it on the radiator in like his classroom so that it would stink up the entire room. And his dad's the janitor. You know what I mean? It's not like a perfect crime.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get busted. And his dad, basically just had a pair of boxing gloves, where he would just, he'd tell his kid to put the gloves on, and then his dad would just beat the shit out of him, just box him. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And then but basically because of that, he actually got pretty good at fighting. And there's another story he tells where I think he was in middle school. I think when he was like 6th or 7th grade or something. And he got in trouble for something, and forgive me again, I'm trying to, there's a lot of stories. Anyway, and he gets sent to the principal's office for something. And it might have been the same story, man. He might have been. This might have been for the cheese. I can't even remember. But he basically knocks his principal completely out.
Wow.
Cold. Just knocks him
when
out.
he was in middle school.
Wow. Like he got kicked out of a school.
Jeez.
So he basically got kicked out of school, and just insanity ensued. He joined kind of like. He moved from job to job. I think he talks about he was like a lumberjack for a while. He and his friend went to be lumberjacks, and then they joined like a circus where they were basically like labor.
Didn't he get paid to fight a kangaroo? Isn't that?
Oh
like
my
one of
god!
the big...
Well, it's the highlight. Well, no, that story is like the highlight for me. So like, he joins the circus. He's banging gypsy women. You know what I mean? In like a tent. He basically explained that like he lost his virginity to like having like a threesome with some gypsy women.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's like, can you imagine? You know what I mean? So and then he tells another story about how he basically like slept with like I'm trying to remember the exact scenario, but basically like there were like 100 nurses stationed at, or waitresses or nurses. I'm trying to remember, but basically like there are 100 nurses and he had slept with like 90 of them or something in like one summer.
That's insane.
Something insane like that. I mean, there's a lot of weird claims in the book, you know what I mean? But, I'll let the man have his fun,
Right.
But the kangaroo fight is absolutely a great story. Like what a time to be alive, I guess, during these times when you could go out, you could play some games, you could drink some beers. And the next thing you know, you're step right up and fight this kangaroo. So his friends like egg him on like assholes, and they're like, "Hey, go fight this kangaroo, man." So he goes in and he steps in the ring. He's got gloves on or whatever. He's fighting this goddamn kangaroo, and he's talking like the book talks about. He keeps it pretty straight. You know what I mean? He's like, Jesus, I cracked this kangaroo so hard. You know what I mean? And blah blah blah. Like he's got a hell of a chin on him, And he's like, I cracked the kangaroo so hard in the face. I knocked him down. Next thing you know, someone's punching me in the back of the head. And I'm going to the ref, and I'm like, who the hell is hitting me? He's not realizing, he doesn't realize, apparently, that the kangaroo's tail is whipping around and hitting me in the back of the head. So he starts threatening the ref, saying, like, if you hit me in the head one more time, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. So he's threatening the ref, and the ref is like, hey, get back in there. You know what I mean? So, like, he basically is like, ding, 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 and they go to their separate corners, and he's like, who the hell is punching me in the head? And his friends are like laughing hysterically, you know what I mean? That he's getting murdered by this kangaroo or whatever.
Wow.
But so that's the story, basically, how he meets his first wife. His first wife is like sitting in the audience, and he's like, she was the prettiest girl I ever did see. You know what I mean? And it's like, can you imagine meeting your spouse at a kangaroo fight and your asshole husband is the one fighting this kangaroo?
What about him says that's the one? I mean, so what is this? This is like 1930 or something like that?
Oh, man, yeah, it's back there. You know what I mean? So is that before or after he goes to war? I'm trying to remember. I think he goes to war. Yeah, it's got to be after. It's got to be after, because that was a whole nother part, you know what I mean, where he basically kind of explains that he basically became... like just numb to violence in general, being in World War II. Right. And apparently whatever company he was in, he kind of explains that I guess for portions of his campaign or time in the army, he was like under Patton's control, and he basically explained that General Patton had a take no prisoners approach to fighting people. So there was not a lot of prisoner taking, and there was a lot of just innocent mass grave digging, it sounded like. So, he's like, yeah, your officers tell you to, take a few guys in the woods and hurry back. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't ask questions, you just do it. Very nonchalant about kind of war crimes and what goes on, you know what I mean? And they kind of briefly showed that in the movie where he's like making two guys dig a grave, But
yeah, I mean, they really breezed over all of that. And also, I mean, like, I think it was intentional, but the first wife is like, I literally, like, I watched the movie twice, and I did not realize until the second time around that he, like, switched wives, like, 30 minutes into it. Like,
yeah, it doesn't really explain much. And basically, in the book, it just explains more kind of what happens. But basically, he ends up having kind of an apartment, and he's basically he's living in poverty with like multiple children, and basically is living this double life as like a mob organizer, kind of criminal, whatever. And he's basically just like sending home money when he can, kind of a thing. Like he's by no means like living well, and so it kind of explains more. I mean, the movie, the book has way more time to kind of flesh out this stuff, but he just wasn't great. He's like, there's not a good time to leave your wife. You know what I mean? He just kind of, you know what I mean? There's never a good time,
right.
But there is, it's like when you have to do it or whatever, So it does, the movie kind of, it almost makes it appear like his second wife, like the girls just move in with the second wife and they're all like living in this house together.
Yeah, like it's such a seamless, like there's no mention of the first wife ever, like there's no evidence that she exists after that moment. And I mean, I think it's meant to speak to how little he cared about her in the end, because it's all from his perspective, but also it's like kind of, there's so many other things going on in the movie too that it's easy to miss, I think.
Yeah, no, I think they just, that was kind of the weirder points in the movie where they kind of demonstrate the home life and the family life, of the duality of Frank, where he's kind of, they kind of show the scene where, old man De Niro is trying to stomp this poor shopkeep, and while he's all de-aged and he's supposed to be like in his 30s or 40s, and he looks like he's 80 years old trying to kick this poor guy in the face, like bringing a stunt guy.
Super clearly digital glass shattering, the glass that like shatters super easily whenever anyone.
Yeah, I was like, you slam this door too hard, that thing's coming out,
I mean? It just felt like I don't know, like it was like looking at After Effects templates or something that just looked like that.
Like an early physics engine or something.
Yeah. So
did you? No, go ahead.
Well, I was curious in the book, since like I'm deferring to you in a lot of this because I've not read the book, but so I'm speaking at it more from the movie perspective, and this whole thing's been illuminating for me because I had no idea how little I knew about Jimmy Hoffa or just so many of the elements of this film. But I was curious, did he ever like go into any of his other daughters at all, like about them? Because the movie is, once again, I'm sure it was for time, but they really only have time to focus on Peggy, and the rest, like, what are there, like 3 other sisters that are just like also kind of forgotten too?
Yeah, it's weird, I mean, they do talk about it a little bit more in the book, but the whole thing where I don't remember, I mean, and this could be in the book, but I don't remember this. It doesn't stick out to me at all, is the whole like Peggy loves Jimmy Hoffa thing, where they just from a young girl to an adult, where they're dancing at the Frank Sheeran appreciation night, to, like, I don't remember any of that. I think they probably just decided to kind of heighten that if there was like a shred of it. Yeah, I don't remember that being a focus point of the book.
Right.
So I think they it was just a mechanism to kind of create kind of this tension, when Jimmy disappears, that Peggy kind of realizes that, her father's involved by how he's acting and not calling Joe. And
it's like a good shorthand. I mean, like the fact that they can communicate most of that plot without, like, I mean, Peggy doesn't say that much, but that's kind of the power of
Anna Penguin. Yeah, Anna Penguin has like 4 lines in the entire movie.
Yeah, right? And it's
like
Anna Paquin's probably one of the best people in the business for like kind of scared, far off stares or something. So that's what she does most of the movie, and same thing for the younger actress playing her character as well. Like, but it works. Like it's clearly the movie isn't as interested in the family dynamic as much as say, like Goodfellas or something like that, but it also I think most of that was probably just condensed so you could get some of the ramifications, especially for it to pay off at the end when he's feeling super remorseful, and also like speak to like probably how much more invested in his like mafia career he was than his family, right?
Yeah, it's weird because the book does more like the film wants to center around Frank. I think Scorsese was like, I don't know who's going to be the star of my movie. Right. You know what I mean? It's got to be Frank's. But like in reality, the family dynamics of Hoffa are much more interesting in the book, and they don't really talk about how, in the movie, like I remarked, I was like, Jimmy Hoffa Jr. is a huge part of the book. He's like Jimmy Hoffa's pride and joy. He's like all-American, captain of the football team, goes to, law school, becomes a lawyer. It was like clerking in DC or something. Like, he's very political, all this stuff. And started working for the Teamsters at like 18. Like, they plug him right in. Like, but he has, every frigging resume thing that you can imagine he has on his list, right? So like, and you know who the current head of the Teamsters union is right now?
Isn't it him?
It's goddamn Jimmy Jr.
Well,
yeah.
So do you think he was omitted because he's still alive and very capable of suing people, or maybe?
But well, I don't know. So like, it's weird because they went out and got so Chucky. Is kind of the adopted son.
Excuse me. So Chucky is still alive,
played by Jesse Plemons. Yeah, Chucky's still alive, and so he's a weird case because in the book they make it very clear that he was at least semi-involved in the plot to remove.
Oh, okay, that makes way more sense.
To remove his adopted father because he was not on the best of terms with Jimmy Hoffa. And he kind of, and of course he worked for the unions too. Like, he's as dirty as them all, you know what I mean? So like, he's plugged in, and he actually had more kind of a rapport with Fitz. So who is kind of, his ally turned adversary for Hoffa, so Chucky, who is, basically the inspiration for the character in The Godfather. I'm trying to remember his name
Fredo?
now. Tom Hagen.
So
Tom Hagen's
concierge.
Yeah, like who played by
Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall, right? So he's kind of like the adopted white son, right? You know what I mean? So Chucky is the freaking basis for Tom Hagen.
No shit.
In The Godfather, yeah, because he was kind of this weird role.
Wow.
And in the book, it made it sound like he's kind of a little bit more in on it, but the movie, it's a little ambiguous,
totally
where you kind of can't tell.
In the movie, like, I think that's like when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, that's why they cast Jesse Plemons in another role where has almost nothing to do except act awkward, which is what he's great at. Like, he has a conversation about a fish in the car for 5 minutes, and it's a great scene.
And that happens in the book. Yeah, they expanded on it from the book, because when Sally Bugs gets in the car, they're like, they're a little suspicious. You know what I mean? So,
and Frank doesn't.
So they were like, well, let's get Frank in the car. Let's get Sally Bugs.
So like, I was doing a little research on that beforehand, and I was impressed because I was looking at the photos of the locations where the hits took place, and they either recreated them perfectly or they actually went to those locations. But certain things, including especially that car scene, like, it seemed like they changed certain elements. Like, apparently Frank had been trying to signal sorry to like skip ahead to then, but Frank was trying to signal to Hoffa that he was like something was amiss, because Frank always usually sat in the back, and instead Frank sat in the passenger seat this time around. And that was supposed to be like kind of like a non-verbal way for him to say, like, hey, something's wrong, don't do this. But in the movie, they make a big point about Frank wanting to sit in the back seat, and
right.
I'm sure maybe they wanted to have him have this like final moment of like communication between him and Pacino for like right before you had to kill him. But like it just felt strange. There's like one or two things, like I didn't research it nearly as extensively as you, but I saw like it was very, very, very close to the truth in most respects, and then there's those few things that they seem to have changed, I assume just for like cinema's sake, but that were just a little off,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to remember how they did it, but I think you're right, because I think Sally Bugs was in the backseat because he was complaining about the the fish.
Yeah, he didn't want to sit
water
on
in
the
the back,
fish
right?
or something like that. Or he was going to,
so.
But anyways, that is a fun scene. Like, I love that, you know, in any movie when they do it, where it's just like you let the tension kind of linger for a little bit, and especially just having this like really inane, dumb conversation, you know, right when you're gonna murder one of the people in the car, and you know this is probably gonna be the last conversation you're gonna have with your friend or something like. That was played really well.
Yeah, it was pretty weird, but to me, it's fairly believable. Like, a lot of people don't think that Frank did it. They think maybe he was involved, maybe he was even there, but that they don't think he actually did it. But to me, it makes perfect logical sense of why you would want him involved,
right,
in doing it, right? You know, and then that Russell Buffalino basically kind of, you know, conceded with, you know, the rest of the group, you know, Fat Tony Salerno, you know, Angelo, you know what I mean? The rest of them, that they had to kind of, you know, make a move, but that Frank was such an ally, you know, but, you know, Frank talked a lot about how they would use like war orphans, and they would use like cowboy, you know, they called them cowboys, where they'd fly a shooter in, and then he'd kill someone, and then they basically just kill him too. They tie up loose ends like that. Yeah. So he talked a lot about like how a lot of this actually works. And so what they'll do is like go up to like Windsor, Canada, get an Italian kid that wants to be an immigrant. They'll promise to like bring him in, be part of the family, but you got to kill a guy to prove yourself.
Wow.
They give him a gun, they send him in, he kills the guy, and then he either dies in the process, which is perfect, or they just kill him to get rid of him, because he's a disposable person that's not connected to anything. Right. So they just get rid of you. So he doesn't know if he's going to get killed himself this entire time that he's sitting in the backseat. Mm-hmm. That's why in the film, I think he makes the point of not wanting to sit behind Sally Bugs,
because he doesn't know
who killed,
if he's going to get like strangled or something.
Because they talk about how Sally Bugs in the book too. They talk about how Sally Bugs had Rottweiler assassinated the treasurer of Tony Pro's you know, local chapter or whatever, because the guy was just gaining popularity. Like, they were worried that he was going to be kind of a contender to run against Tony Pro, so they go ahead and kill him. You know, and Frank knows all that, so he's like, you know what? I'm not going to sit behind Sally Bugs in the car.
Probably good move. I'll take the smelly fish seat over that.
Yeah, but then you know, eventually kind of kills Sally Bugs, because Sally Bugs was going and walking into federal buildings. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Can't do it.
Well, so,
you know, you can't. You can get called into a federal building, but you got to report it.
Right. Well, so you know, did that actually, like, they pay some lip service to the fact that after they did the hit on him, you know, in voiceover, De Niro's like, it turns out Sally did tell someone.
Yeah, it was a bad hit.
And, the guy forgot to tell someone else. Talk about a major fuck-up, by the way.
I know. I mean, no, it's just a guy's life on the line, you know what I mean?
I had to post it, you know, damn.
Shit. I forgot to call that guy. But that's what's fascinating about how the mafia works. It's like, you know, some guy forgets to tell another guy that you told him something, and then you get killed. Mm-hmm. Because it's repeated over and over again in the book, but it's like they had a motto that, when in doubt, have no doubt.
Wow, yeah.
So, you know, it's like, if there's even a shred of doubt, just kill him. You know what I mean? Like, and that was a big part of their lives too, and living in constant fear, is that there's so much psychological warfare going on, where you place gentle rumors to discredit people. You know what I mean?
So you could be doing nothing wrong, and you could like still get whacked just because.
No, well, that was the problem. So I think either someone talked about it in the book, but like either Hoffa or who was it? Maybe it was someone who was in prison, where they were like, the FBI was basically like fucking with them by constantly visiting him. And so by making it look like they were constantly visiting him, they were going to basically make it look like he was cooperating with them. Yeah. So they were like, the FBI would do this to you if they were like, if you weren't careful, they could basically get you killed, because all they have to do is just come visit you over and over again, once a week, every week. and soon, they'll think that you're cooperating, and they'll go ahead and just kill you.
If you look like a rat, you might as well act like a rat too.
Yeah, if yeah. So and they had so many problems with that. Yeah, so Sally Bugs basically got murdered just because they were just kind of over careful about some of this stuff.
Wow.
But Sally Bugs knows better. You know what I mean? You gotta report that stuff. You know what I mean? But whatever, man. There's so many interesting, kind of little side parts of this. I love the Joey Gallo scene. I love the, I went on the deep end on Joey Gallo stuff. I if you dig into that whole little nugget part, that was kind of one of my favorite little conspiracy things.
So this is Joey, like, with the switchblade and the chickens.
No, that's Skinny Razor.
Oh, Skinny Razor.
That was Bobby Cannavale, who plays Skinny Razor, who basically, he was like a slaughterhouse manager, but then he basically became like a low-level thug where he kind of he basically ran this like social club for like rising mobsters, basically.
Right.
And that's where like you see Frank get kind of introduced to him about getting him steaks so that he can, because Frank was basically like stealing he worked for a company called Food Fair. And so, like, they kind of show it in the film, but basically what he would do is he would just steal steaks, like they'd be at the warehouse, right, where the steaks are, the slaughterhouse, whatever, right? And they would hang 10 sides of beef, and then they would lock the back with this special lock, which they show in the film. So, like, it's supposed to be like a zip tie, like a metal zip tie, but basically it's the manager's seal, basically. Yeah. And because the managers were lazy pieces of shit, half the time they would just give it to Frank to close because they didn't want to go out in the cold and actually do it on the truck. Right. So Frank would basically steal like 4 out of 10 of the sides of beef, drop them off at restaurants, get paid, and then put the seal back on. And then he would do some shenanigans where he would kind of, place tags here or there, remove stuff, change orders, whatever had to be done. And that's basically how he got too ballsy, and he basically showed up one time with an empty, which is in the film.
Yeah,
right?
I love how dumb that scene, like the fact that he ever thought that could work. Like,
yeah, no, he got a little too greedy. So the Food Fair, they tried to fire him, but he's part of the union, so that's how he gets tied in with Russell Buffalino, no, who is it? Not Russell Buffalino.
Are you talking about Ray Romano?
Ray Romano's character,
Bill Buffalino, I think.
Bill Buffalino, right? Who's Russell Buffalino's cousin, and that's a great scene, kind of where they're kind of meeting each other and defending them and stuff. But that's kind of how he got introduced, to Russell Buffalino, and then kind of Angelo and those guys and. The whole scene with whispers and stuff was pretty fun, trying to burn down the linen company and, and all that shit. But yeah, no, he learned a lot about, the mafia the hard way. You know what I mean? I think he would have got killed by the Jewish mob, if they had just, how many 6'4" Irishmen are going to be driving around your building before you take notice?
Well, so do you think if he had actually blown that place up, he would for sure be dead, right?
Oh yeah. No, I don't think he would have even gotten a chance before they nabbed him and then just like tortured him to death.
Yeah, like well, I was just always curious. Like, I love that in movies. Like, it's almost like the fucking mob kingpins have like fucking supernatural powers. It's like, all of a sudden Bobby Cannavale just shows up out of nowhere and tells you to get in the car. Like. He looked into his magical orb that all mafia men have and saw that there was. Mischief afoot or something.
Oh yeah, no, that was a great little scene, and they kind of talk about his name was Whispers because his breath was so bad that he didn't want to open his mouth very wide, so that he basically had to speak very silently and gently because he didn't want to open his mouth because his breath was that bad because of his dentures or something. Little tidbit.
That makes so much more sense. I was actually wondering about that very thing.
And they were like, no, they were like, no, there's 2 Whispers, not the other Whispers, this one. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how many guys are named Whispers?
Yeah, I mean, they really gotta get more creative with their branding.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, it's like we were talking about, Fat Tony Salerno. Like, the Fat Tony, the generic use of Fat Tony. You know what I mean? That the Simpsons can take it, but then, Pacino jokes in the film, like, which Tony are you talking about? They're all goddamn named, and they're all named Tony. Like, what is wrong with these people?
I mean, it is true.
They're all named Tony, you got Fat Tony, you got Tony Pro. You know what I mean? There's just too many damn Tonys.
Yep.
But, I don't know. Kind of circling back to Joey Gallo, the scene, Joey Gallo basically was kind of famous for allegedly killing, Albert Anastasia, who's kind of the head of the Anastasia crime family, who's basically famous for burning down the goddamn Normandy. Did you read that whole thing with the boat, the giant ocean liner?
Oh, no.
So, like, this giant ocean liner named the Normandy, they got renamed the Normandy after Pearl Harbor, that they're going to basically repurpose it as a troop transport. Mm-hmm. But Anastasia is running all the New York City's, docks. And he wants to convince the government that that their ships are unsafe. You know what I mean? That they should be paying protection. You know what I mean? So Anastasia, allegedly, and there's people that don't believe that he actually did this, but he 100% did it. Like, Lucky Luciano even thinks he burned down the goddamn Normandy. Wow. You know what I mean? So, like, he sank this giant ship that was U.S. property that's going to be filled with U.S. soldiers and sent to war. He basically burned down this goddamn ship to prove that the government needs to pay him protection money for keeping the dock safe.
That's insane. And the government... So what did the government do? Did they just...
I don't know. I think they figured out some sort of weird arrangement with it. Got to keep the dock safe. Can't be having, you got Germans abroad, and then you got the Italian mafia. You know what I mean? That they didn't care for much for Mussolini.
Right.
You know what I mean? And as it turns, a lot of apparently Mussolini basically his crackdown in Sicily forced a lot of them to come here.
Oh, no kidding.
So a lot of the mobsters that we have are thanks to Mussolini.
No kidding.
There you
go. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you got to go somewhere, right?
Right.
But anyway, the Anastasia murder is kind of in the film because that's the guy who gets his throat slashed or shot in the barber seat.
Oh.
So like in that scene where allegedly it was Joey Gallo as one of the guys, and but he was crazy. So he was part of the Profanzi family. When he was kind of growing up, he and his he had two brothers. Imagine like this crazy Joe Gallo, and then his brother was like Larry Kid Blast Gallo, I think, and then he had one other brother. But basically, they basically kidnapped the bosses or like some higher ups in the family, held them hostage for like a bigger cut of the end. I mean, the guy was absolutely insane. So he made a lot of enemies. He made a lot of enemies with like Joe Colombo. He was, a lot of people like rumored that, so Colombo is shot in the film. He's the guy that he's kind of at the rally in like 1970.
He's the guy that got shot
like 70
in
or 71.
Slow motion by the...
Yes. Yeah. And so Joey Gallo, Joey Gallo went to prison and became friends with Nicky Barnes. You know Nicky Barnes?
No, never heard of him.
He's like one of the big drug dealers like in Harlem and like New York. He was like friends with, I think he was a rival of Denzel Washington's character in the movie that he... Oh,
American Gangster?
Remember American Gangster? Yeah, he was like, I think Cuba Gooding Jr. plays him.
Okay.
And so basically Joey Gallo went to prison and became good friends with like a lot of the black like inmates. And he basically was like a mentor to like some of the other gangsters that were in there. And basically he got like ousted. He got the shit beaten out of him by guards because he let a black barber like cut his hair.
Oh, wow.
So like that was apparently like a huge no-no, I guess. You know what I mean? So like, so Joey Gallo, he wasn't well liked amongst the other mobsters because he was like not incredibly racist, I guess. So like, so basically like the shooter, the guy who shot Joe Colombo was black.
Right.
And had no real mob ties. Like, no one knew who he was. So everyone kind of assumed, oh, it's a black guy, so he's got to be best friends with Crazy Joe Gallo. You know what I mean? And so Gallo, or Colombo, basically, he gets, like, shot in the head, but he gets put in a coma. So they didn't even kill him right. You know what I mean? Like, So, sure, Frank in the book was, like, really upset about this. That, if you got to kill a guy, like, do it right. Don't let the guy, like, become a vegetable. Like, you put him on life support, like he's on he's in a coma.
Oh, so that's like part of the code is like you have to make it clean and quick and shit.
Please.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? And try to, and he got killed, like, surrounded by his family. You know what I mean? So, like, his like family saw it, and that really upset.
Wasn't
a lot.
It being out in public in general? Because, like, it was in the middle of a fucking rally, so there's like people
it was
everywhere.
at a rally. Yeah.
Like they kept on saying that was like super sloppy in the movie. I think, like,
yeah, it's weird because Gallo, like, or Columbo, he hated he formed the Italian American Civil Rights League in 1969, and then I think he got killed 2 years later. But he hated, like, it was hilarious because he's head of the goddamn Columbo family, but he hated the
Italian American League.
Well, yeah, he didn't want he hated that the mafia was like an Italian thing, and that he went after, like, he famously kind of went after Coppola and Paramount and stuff, and said, like, I want the words like mafia, I want Cosa Nostra, all that shit taken out of the script of The Godfather. Like, they put the squeeze on him.
So
you know what I mean? So, like,
yeah, like, I mean, like, yeah, like, that was his thing, right? He was, like, kind of like a socialite as well. He would, like, they showed him at the Copa and, like, hanging out with movie stars and everything.
Yeah, that's Crazy Joe Gallo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Crazy Joe Gallo was, he was too flamboyant. You know what I mean? But he pissed off the Profanci family, which became... Who the Profancis became? They became the Genovese's family, I think, with Tony Salerno. I'm trying to keep all my mob families right. Yeah, Genovese family. Yeah, Fat Tony. Yeah, currently family. Like, yeah, so the Luciano family became the Genovese family.
Okay.
And then the Colombo family is Joe Colombo. But yeah, it just let's see.
Hold on. I need to erase my chalkboard and draw some more lines.
Yeah, but he basically, Columbo, he got shot. He's paralyzed. He died 7 years later. Gallo was kind of rumored to be in on it because, I don't know if the strongest evidence was that the hitman was black. But whatever, you know what I mean? So Gallo was, once he got out of prison, he kind of moved up to, he's just running around in Greenwich Village, and he wanted to be a socialite. Like Joey Gallo, he was a mobster, but then he went to prison, then he got out of the mob, and then he kind of became part of, like, high society, and he's running around with actors and writers and stuff like that, and he's trying to be hip and cool, and he was good friends with Jerry Orbach, because Jerry Orbach of, like, Law and Order fame, you know what I mean? He's like the old curmudgeon-y guy. But Jerry Orbach was in a movie called The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, and it was like I've never seen it, but it's apparently like a comedic take on the mafia or whatever, or making fun of it, and Jerry Orbach's character was kind of making fun of Joey Gallo. And so Joey Gallo, like, confronted Jerry Orbach, and they had, like, dinner, and then they became, like, really good friends. Yeah. And so but Joey Gallo was crazy. He had, like, a pet lion, and he kept it, like, he had an apartment in Manhattan, but then he kept the lion in a basement, and then he would go and show up at people, like, he'd show up at places of people who owed him money with the goddamn lion. And, just shit like that. He would bring it to nightclubs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? When you show up with a goddamn lion, people are going to start kind of taking you seriously, no matter what, But, in the film, you kind of see... they turned like Gotham Comedy Club into the Copa Cabana, or into Copa Cabana, the famous club.
Yeah, I could kind of see that just from how the stage was built, and that's definitely nice that they had.
I've been in the Gotham Comedy Club, and I couldn't tell. Like, I didn't know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like I'd been there when I lived in New York in, like, 2011, 2012. I think I went in 2012. And I don't, but I was only there one night, so I didn't, Jim Norton and Don Rickles, and, but apparently it was like that, where so it the story goes that it was like that kind of on his birthday night and everything. But the whole thing in the movie where he kind of bumps into Russell and points at his pin for the like Italian American League or whatever, and kind of talks shit about the league, and then, you know, instantly, like an hour later, he's sentenced to death by Frank. You know what I mean? Like, that whole thing is kind of not really the case. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people wanted Joey Gallo dead.
I mean, that makes sense.
You know,
and
it was like more
that was his thing, is just making enemies. So you're saying that it's not actually confirmed that Frank killed him? Like, it could have been somebody else?
So Frank says he killed him. And so Frank takes credit for a lot of hits where he says, one thing he explains is that a lot of times when you go in and kill someone, and if you're in a neighborhood where they know what the fuck is up, which is like Little Italy, where Umberto's Clam House was, and the people there, they know. Like, this isn't Times Square. It's not full of tourists. You know what I mean? So, like, it was like 2:30 or 4:30 in the morning. And so all the tourists were gone, right? And there's the line in the book and there's a line in the movie where they're like, all the tourists from Idaho are at home in bed. You know what I mean? But basically, you know, he explained that growing up in these neighborhoods, you know, in Philly, New York, Detroit, you name it, like, when in these neighborhoods where people get killed, you know, people don't want the grief of being a witness. So they just, if the cops come around and go, ask for a description, they just say, he wore a mask. I don't know. I didn't see anything. He wore a mask. Right. They never wore masks. Right. But these people were like, I'm not about to tell you that he was a 6'4" Irishman. Yeah. You know what I mean? So people discredit Frank's account because the eyewitnesses are like, I don't know. It was four little Italian. Gallo's wife, he'd been married to this actress for like a month. And then she was like, yeah, fat little Italian guys came in and started shooting. You know, and then, you know, other accounts were that it was like two guys. But Frank says, no, I was the only one. And in the movie, basically kind of makes it look like he died right away, but he actually died in the hospital. Like, he got shot a few times. You know, and even in the book, it's unclear because he kind of always has a way of talking about the thing that it protects him from the benefit of the doubt, but also, if you read between the lines, it's very clear that he committed this murder, where he's like, I walked in, I turned to the bar, I faced the table, and then they got shot.
He never says,
He never says, I shot Joey Gallo in the back of the head. He just says, Joey Gallo got hit. He's like, the bodyguard got hit in the back, you know, reaching for his gun. And Joey Gallo made a run for the back door. He got shot twice in the doorway. But, like, he talks about it like that. You know, he was going for his car. Maybe there was a piece in the car. It wasn't going to do him any good. You know, in the film, he gets kind of he's obviously dead. Like, he's shot multiple times, and he's dead on the sidewalk, right? But I think in reality, he died, like, in the hospital. He was taken, like, in a cop car, basically. Took him to the hospital, and he died. From God knows how many gunshot wounds. But crazy Joey Gallo, you know what I mean? Bob Dylan wrote a crazy song about him. You can go look it up, and, you know?
Yeah.
He's a real one.
I mean, like so many characters in the movie, what you just told me would have been an awesome movie in and of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, give Joey Gallo a goddamn movie, you know what I mean? And, you know, just scenes like that. Loved it. What else? Did you want to get into the Carmine Sonny Pinto da Biasi? A lot of people think that he actually killed him.
That killed Crazy Joe, or?
Yeah, that killed Crazy Joe Gallo. But in one of the later releases of The Irishman, Brandt, he includes a little anecdote from a friend of his who is a college professor, and apparently one of his former students is, now kind of a well-established reporter, I think for Fox News or something. Uh-huh. And at the time of the Joey Gallo shooting, she was 18 years old, like out with friends, and she was in the restaurant and witnessed the whole thing. Shit. And basically saw a picture of Frank and was like, "Holy shit, that's
wow."
him. So this part of the book, like, kind of corroborates it. You know what I mean? So who knows? Yeah. Like, they don't release the name of the woman journalist, right. But I don't know why the guy would make that up. You know what I mean? So to kind of, because this has been years on of like who really killed Joey Gallo. No one knows. You know what I mean? But well, there you go. But kind of going into the fantastical claims. Do you want to go through them?
I mean, do we jump right to JFK or do we?
Well, that's the whole. There's so much JFK stuff. There's so much craziness that it is. That's the real like Forrest Gump parts for me, where it's like,
it happens to be the Bay of Pigs that you're delivering.
Right, exactly. Where it's like, hey, go drive this truck. You're gonna meet at this spot, and then they're gonna fill it with army gear, and then you're gonna drive it down to Florida. And then you're going to drive like oranges back or something. So he basically takes credit for delivering the weapons that were made, that were used in the Bay of Pigs invasion. He delivers a $500,000 bribe to, Attorney General John Mitchell to contribute to Nixon's campaign, which it was later pardoned by Nixon so Hoffa was pardoned by Nixon in 1971. He delivers the rifles that were supposedly used to shoot JFK. It's like he's quite the bag man, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, did the mob not have anyone else to... I mean,
no.
Granted, he seems like he was dependable, but, geez Louise, talk about, like, right place in the right time or wrong place in the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. Like,
so that's it's... I think the book, if you really want to know more about how much Hoffa, like the Hoffa versus the Kennedys thing, that's much more in the book, much more heightened, because, they talk about how, they just, were kind of blown away because I think, and the story leans into kind of the rumors of Joe Kennedy and the bootlegging,
right.
So they kind of see the Kennedys as kind of one of their own almost, you know what I mean? And they basically, they basically, and they show it in the movie where they go to the graveyard and they start, making, all the, so that because he basically won Illinois, right? And that was the big swing state that Kennedy won the election on, right? And so Kennedy becomes president, he makes RFK Attorney General, and then RFK decides to go after the mob like super duper hard. So like convictions of like organized crime officials went up like 800%.
Wow.
In the first year or something that he kind of became in charge. And then in 1960 he wrote a book naming Hoffa as like this giant kingpin of organized crime and all the shit. So like he hated the Kennedys. And in the book they talk about all the times, man, where Kennedy almost got him and then the jury gets bought off and Hoffa doesn't get caught and all this stuff. I mean, he eventually gets busted on jury tampering in Tennessee. That's why he goes to jail. It's not always clear. In the movie, you're not really clear. Like, why exactly did he go to jail? They kind of briefly mention it, and then they just see him walking into the jail, right?
Yeah, like that's another thing I didn't catch until the second time. It's the guy wearing the wire, like the fat Louisiana guy, and really the only tip-off you get is that's like real quick shot of him in the bathroom handing off the wire to some dude in a trench coat.
Right. Yeah. So they talk about how, they did all kinds of crazy shit. Like he had a heavyweight boxer basically show up and vouch for Jimmy and like shake his hand in the middle of the courtroom to like win over all the black jurors or something crazy like that. And they'd never met before.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of weird shit like that, but Kennedy couldn't believe it. He's like, what the, he's like, if I don't, some reporter asked Kennedy, like, what do you do if Hoffa gets away this time or something? He goes, I'll jump off the Capitol building if we don't convict him. And they didn't get him and he got acquitted and, like Hoffa, like mailed him like a toy parachute or something, as a fuck you gag. Wow. You know what I mean? So they went back and forth for years, man. So it's not in the book. It's much more well detailed because the book is interesting because it's written by Brandt, who's giving you all the backstory, like narration, and then there's the first-hand account of Frank. And then Frank isn't the most reliable narrator all the time, so you rely on Brandt to kind of give you the context of like the severity and weight of all the shit.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? So it is an actual really interesting read if you're kind of interested in this stuff. I highly recommend it. But kind of going back to the Kennedy stuff, it's interesting because Scorsese decided that it was too conspiracy theory-ist, that he wanted to pull back. But the book is like steers right into it, man. You know what I mean? You got to sell some books. So let's talk about some crazy shit, you know? So, you know, if you don't know, you know, the mafia was quite well established in Cuba, which was, you know, a resort area, you know, a gambling paradise, you know, hotels, casinos, you name it. A lovely place to visit. And then Castro comes in and just booted them all out, a la frigging Mussolini, you know, just takes everything. Mafia obviously not happy about it. So who do they back? You know what I mean? They support, you know, they got frigging, you know, Ruby, and they got the, you know, everyone down there working from the Bay of Pigs invasion and all that craziness. And Kennedy decides to basically sink his own Bay of Pigs invasion when he decides to remove the air cover and basically let all these people just be tortured to death horribly, because he decided to, you know, not use, not kind of back the movement. This obviously upset the mob, and you know, and the fact that he's going after them, trying to convict them of all this stuff. They're like, "What are you doing? We just got you the presidency, and you're coming after us? Like, what are you doing?"
Like, so was that really always Robert's like main prerogative? Like, I was curious about like what, you know, the fact that they like turned around so quickly on the very people that got them elected. You know, I always knew that the Kennedys had mafia involvement and that probably did help them get elected, but I didn't realize to what degree in the movie. And like, you never really get the Kennedy side of things, so I'd almost wonder, like, you know, like, is it just basically like a press thing? Was Robert just like, I need a win, and the mob is like a good... It seems weird to kind of like bite the hand that fed you, and I'm also kind of surprised, at least in the context of the movie, you know, the mob seemed like they were patient with it for a while, like before they really started to finally, you know, like pull the plug on a lot of things.
Yeah, no, they were not so jazzed with RFK. So, you know, they go after, you know, it's talked way more about, you know, mostly in regards to Hoffa. So like when Hoffa starts kind of acting up and he's getting upset and things like that, and he's becoming uncontrollable, you know, a lot of, you know, they talk about in the book that, and it's oddly removed from the movie, but they have a conversation at a dinner. You know, the scene that happens at the Frank appreciation night where Frank is kind of going back and forth from Fat Tony and Salerno and Russell to Jimmy and kind of going back and forth and kind of being the middleman. That kind of happened like before this event took place, but they were all present. And Russell kind of tells them like, hey man, you know, I think, you know, a lot of people feel that you're not showing you know, proper
appreciation.
Appreciation. Yeah. And then he mouthed and whispered, for Dallas. So, you know what I mean? You know, they go into it in the book about like the Dallas kind of crime syndicate and how like Jack Ruby, there's no way, like, you know, if Jack Ruby hadn't killed Oswald, because Oswald is basically what we were talking about, where you go and get kind of a crazy guy like Sirhan, you know, who ends up killing RFK. You go find kind of a crazy person. And Frank really took exception with that. He didn't like when they used crazy people to do this stuff. You know what I mean? He's more, you know, he's classically trained. He's more old school. But he didn't think it was proper. You know what I mean? He didn't think it was sporting to use a psycho to go kill people. Right. You know what I mean? He thought it was kind of a clumsy, shitty thing to do. Have some respect. Right.
There's a code.
You know what I mean? So there's a goddamn code. You know what I mean? So he didn't like that, you know, that kind of weird, crazy people were used as patsies and stuff like that, you know? So that's why Jack Ruby basically, like, apparently, you know, they were saying, like, if Jack Ruby hadn't killed Oswald, then he would have been, like, there's far worse things than dying in prison, is what he described. He was like, you know what I mean? He's like, yeah, you and your family being tortured to death are far worse outcomes than you just live, you know, being, you know, in prison. Yeah. You know? But, you know, very interesting stuff. I love the scene where they kind of, you know, they do the whole flag at half mast. That was part of the book where Jimmy's like,
no, fuck you.
What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, you know, and that, you know, and the guy was like, what do you mean? I'm like, you know, he just got shot. but it was weird, you know, in the when they do the diner scene where they're all like kind of surprised to hear the news, you know? They're like, well, they all kind of knew it was going to try to be, it was, you know,
Rumored
they're going to try to
that they might do something like that or whatever.
Do something, you know? Yeah, so kind of interesting stuff, but I think, you know, Scorsese didn't want to get
I mean, that's
too crazy.
Like, if you delved any deeper into it, it would like turn into a different movie. But it is a little frustrating because the movie kind of like just kind of hints at some of these like huge topics, and like you never get the full story on most of them.
Right. I mean, because they drop that line, they're like, you know, when Jimmy's like, they wouldn't dare. You know what I mean? I'm untouchable. They wouldn't dare touch me. And either Frank or Russell tells him, or Frank tells him, it's like, if they can kill the president of the United States, they can kill the president of the Union. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like no one's really untouchable, dude. You know what I mean? That's what you got to remember. You know, so you should be wise.
I assume then it's like basically Hoffa was crazy, because it seems like such a obvious, you know, like it's the mob. They're not going to not kill you, especially like you said, like if you kill the president, then you're, you know, like all bets are off. Like I would trust these guys. That's kind of like one of the things in the movie, and I guess in the story in general, like in the movie they kept on trying to push like, oh man, Frank was so torn between Russell and Hoffa, and he, you know, felt guilty about it, but like he really didn't have a choice. Like it's clear that if he had said no, he would have been killed immediately, I assume.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's it's like, you know, and that was one thing that in the book there's a line, I don't know if they say it in the movie, but like in you know 1960 or 1950 something like that, like Jimmy Hoffa was more famous than Elvis, and by 1960 he was bigger than the Beatles or something. Like there's a line in the book like that, and I was like, I don't know, man. You know, I'll take your word for it. I wasn't there, but you know, it's hard for me. And they kind of show this scene in the film where he's kind of talking to the nurse, and he shows him a picture of Jimmy, and she's like, "Oh, who's that?" Like he doesn't have any Nielsen ratings right now. You know what I mean? Like his whatever comp you score or whatever, like no one, you know what I mean? Like older people know who Jimmy Hoffa was, but like we don't know that much. You know what I mean? Like how much do we know? Our generation
more than like a punchline. Like, you know, that's one of the things that's great about the movie is like, yeah, like I don't know anything about labor unions in the 60s, right?
Yeah. Well, there you go. But Jimmy, you know, big deal. Fancied himself quite a big deal. You know, I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he's kind of yelling at all his lawyers.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You know, he's just like,
yeah,
you had him doing, well, this is happening, and just like losing it on them.
I love that, like they have, like, because that's like when you could just tell Scorsese was like, all right, Pacino, just do your thing, like
just go
yell,
nuts, bro.
You know, like shred those vocal cords. But like there's some part where he can't even get the word out. Like he's like, you sold the insurance to the guy's cousin or something like that, and he can't get the last word out. He like
can't even believe it.
Like he just
he's so pissed.
Like takes 30 seconds of him like slamming on the table and before he finally gets it out. But and I like how like De Niro's kind of butthurt about that too. Is like, oh wait, were you yelling at me or were you yelling at them? Like it's such a random, like, you know, I don't know what that scene really did, like the little after exchange or whatever. But,
right. No, I guess maybe to just establish that he's like,
they're like
an
friends.
Endearing character. They're buddies, you know. I don't know, but yeah, no, I don't remember that scene in the book. Like I don't that conversation like that, an instance. But yeah, I loved the scene where he's talking about I think he's talking about Joe Kennedy having a stroke, and how like, you know, like it's Bobby's fault.
Oh yeah, their son killed him.
Yeah, they killed him. Like, and he's just nonchalantly kind of talking about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I love those scenes where you forget this man is trying to like do a script. You know what I mean? I was like, it feels completely
like
ad-libbed.
Yeah, like I mean, like I don't know, like Pacino is one of those actors that like he is always Pacino in something. He's like Christopher Walken, like you're that's the selling point is you're coming to see Pacino, but he's like disappears into this role with all the weird like I don't know what kind of accent he's doing, but he's got a little like lisp or something. You know, he's almost doing a little bit of a Donald Duck voice at times. Where
I don't know if is that Detroit because he's a Detroit guy.
Maybe it's like
is that
like or like Chicago or something like that. Like but yeah, it was interesting, man. It just like it all like I could watch. And he really is the heart of the movie too. Like, there's so many great performances.
Oh yeah, he was the best performance. Yeah. I didn't really. Everyone else was okay. Pesci, I thought, was fine. De Niro, kind of okay. You know.
Well, they're
better than normal.
Yeah, they're more understated.
Pacino was actually. Yeah,
like
if I had one Oscar to give anyone involved, I think it's Pacino.
Yeah, like I mean, well, I could also kind of like the thing like with Pesci and De Niro, like. I kind of figured, like, you know, okay, it's like old friends, you know, working together again, kind of doing the same thing. You know, they're in their regular pocket, but like Scorsese and Pacino have like never gotten to work together before, so you can almost feel them like, look, this is the only opportunity we're probably ever gonna have. Like, you could kind of feel that energy throughout a lot of the movie too. Is just like, you know, this is theoretically the last performance we're gonna get out of Joe Pesci. Certainly the only movie you're going to have all of these actors together in this caliber of a film, like probably, you know, in this lifetime, you know, so, yeah, like that added a lot to it and kind of gave everything a little bit more weight. I thought Pesci, like, I could be just projecting, but I thought he was, like, it was really interesting seeing him play so against type and kind of see him and De Niro's power dynamic change. Like, they're usually like De Niro's the head guy and, you know, Pesci's like the little scrappy do like sidekick, and like just to see it totally reversed and to see them try to play up Pesci's kind of like tininess, like his quietness, like, you know, isn't the guy he's based on supposed to be called the Quiet Don? And
yeah,
like you know, he really did sell the.
Well, both like him and Angelo were both pretty quiet. Like he was called one was the docile Don, and one was the quiet Don.
So, but Angelo's got like, because I know Harvey Keitel's in the movie for like 5 minutes, and they talk about him briefly, but he's got like a whole history too, right?
Oh yeah. They just didn't get really into it, but yeah, part of the Philly and Russell Buffalino is more like a little bit more kind of like the Buffalo fan, like up in Buffalo, you know what I mean? But like came down through like eastern northern Pennsylvania and shit like that, you know what I mean? So they're all kind of, it's part of one of the smaller crime families, but basically like in the 50s, Russell was kind of coming up and you know, he basically came to power because he organized this big meeting in upstate New York and a bunch of guys got pinched. Like 50 mobsters got pinched at this big meeting because they made too much goddamn commotion. Wow. Next thing you know, this small town is like, what's going on? Why are there all these Italian mobsters in our town? They weren't casual and they had this big like meeting, right? And then the local cops are just like, round them up.
Wow.
And Russell, I think he escaped, but like a lot of the leadership kind of
got nabbed in that.
Got pinched, wow. You know what I mean? But so Russell, you know, I mean, a bigwig, you know what I mean? He was once asked to be the boss of I think the Genovese family, you know what I mean? Which is originally like the Luciano family. Lucky Luciano's kind of part of the original 5 families, you know, and it became renamed the Genovese family in like 1959 or something after Vito Genovese, you know what I mean? But you know, to be asked to be the boss of one of the 5 families.
I mean, that's pretty much like making it as high as you can make it in the.
Oh, that's pretty goddamn high, you know. Fat Tony Salerno, big part of the you know, the film. He was what's his name?
Oh, the dude from The Wire.
He was in like Entourage, and was he in
Dominic?
Was
he in The Wire?
Yeah.
I had no idea that was him until I looked him up because he definitely like that fake nose. He looked like a Sin City character or something, you know, like. But he was really good too. You know, Scorsese casts all the good, authentic New York character actors. I loved randomly enough, fucking Action Bronson as the funeral casket salesman.
Kind of took me out of it
a little bit.
Kind of took me out of it.
At that point, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're wrapping it up. Let's throw in. Let's get past the funeral stuff.
But going back to Fat Tony, you tease me with a big, the chin, Volante story, the hobo Don. You got a fun story. So if you don't know, Fat Tony is basically like, in real life, he was kind of like a patsy for the family. You know what I mean? Where he was kind of a stooge boss. You know what I mean? For a time where he was very powerful, but he was once characterized like the most powerful mobster in the United States. But it's largely believed that it was all a ruse. That Vincent the Chin Gigante was kind of behind the scenes pulling all the strings.
He was basically like Uncle Junior in The Sopranos. Like he was, I think he faked senility, being crazy for a while, so he could.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen the footage of him like shuffling around New York, mumbling in a bathrobe?
Yeah, I think I've seen like YouTube clips somewhere a long time ago. But I mean, it's a good act. It keeps you out of prison.
It worked, dude. I can't believe it worked. He got acquitted because he was found unfit to stand trial. That's the long con, my friend.
But did they eventually caught him doing that, right? Was that the goal?
I think they figured it out. But imagine being the most powerful mobster in the United States, but publicly you're out looking like a hobo, shuffling around. In an effort to convince everyone watching you, the FBI included, that you're in fact just a crazy person.
I mean, that's doubly awesome.
Absolutely.
I would love to just have an excuse to act like a crazy person in public and get away with it in the first place, but also secretly running the mob. Yeah, shit, yeah.
He's got the best nicknames: the Chin, the Odd Father, the Enigma in the bathrobe, the Robe, the Real Boss of New York. Well, there you go. The Chin. Former boxer.
Well, so, okay. I kind of...
You've segued perfectly into this. He teased me. He's like, hey, find a way to bring up the Chin Gigante. I got a family story. It's a great story. Yeah. Just you gotta mention it somehow. Bring it up, and then I'll jump right in.
Well, okay, so jumping right in. Basically,
there we go.
The story. My dad grew up in New York in the one of the neighborhoods that was controlled by the mob, and the story he always tells is Vinny the Chin Gigante's niece asked him out to prom. One time, like when he was like junior or senior year of high school, and so basically everyone knew who she was, and so basically he was already paranoid. His dad was like freaking out about it, and his dad basically like told him over and over again, like, don't get handsy, don't do anything stupid, like,
you better behave yourself.
You will end up in a ditch. Put the fear of God in him. So, they go out, they all meet in a limo that she paid for and everything like that, and they all go to the Copa. Mm-hmm. And so it's literally the scene out of Goodfellas. Like, one of the reasons why my dad loves Goodfellas so much is, that scene where they go and they bring the table up to the front of the Copa, so like they like literally like bring a table out of nowhere and like put them on the dance floor. Like that exact thing happened to my dad. Like he walked up to the Copa, there was a huge line. The niece was like, hey, don't worry about it. They cut the line. Like they asked for their name and they said Volpe. The guy looks in the book and like you see him like scroll his finger all the way down to the bottom in like big capital letters. It said Volpe. So they let him in, they whisk him in, they put a table down on the floor, and they saw somebody famous, can't remember now, but they saw somebody play there. And they had a great time, nothing crazy happened or anything like that. But when my dad got back that night, his dad had been out on the porch chain smoking cigars all night, waiting for him to come back because he was worried that he would like never return. And I think the niece ended up marrying another dude years later, and the husband ended up inheriting like a garbage waste management company,
Oh,
like straight up Soprano shit.
Oh, we could have been kings.
I know,
sir.
I know. If you ever
imagine if you had been the illegitimate child of the niece of the Chin.
Yeah.
You're running around New York. What a life, my friend.
I'd be living in Jersey, doing some Atlantic City shit or whatever.
You'd be the worst mobster of all time.
No, I'd be a total Fredo. I would be
no, but like you'd be like, they'd be like, hey, you got to go go see a guy about a matter.
Yeah.
You got to drive across the river. You got to go go talk to a guy about who owes us something. You know what I mean? Blah blah blah. Can you imagine going to shake down somebody?
Oh no, I would end up giving them money. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you'd be like, oh, this apartment looks a little rough.
I feel bad for you, man.
You need some new drapes. Yeah. You'd be the shittiest mobster of all time.
Absolutely. I don't have.
Where did it come from? Because your dad's a psychopath. So like, he's just so hardwired. You know what I mean? Like, da, 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 da. And your mom's pretty intense. Like, how did this? I don't
know. I think it's just like you get those two extremes, and you just kind of end up at zero somewhere. In a weird way, it kind of balances you out. But. Yeah, no, I'd be a terrible mobster. I would be if there's like a red shirt equivalent of mobster, I'd be like, oh, hey, there's Andrew. He just joined the mob today. Oh, hey, somebody shot him. That was a shame.
What happens to all the kids of these mobsters that just don't want anything to do with it?
I mean, I'm sure they're going to school, like it basically anything as any other citizen, except you probably have a good amount of money bankrolling you, so you're not in that bad of a spot, right?
Yeah.
Or you're just like Anna Paquin in the movie, and you cut them out. You put up your "I'm out to lunch" sign when you're at your bank or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not much she's gonna do. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
she's not gonna get into hitmanning and extortion.
You never know. That would have been a interesting turn for the movie if it suddenly turned into
take your daughter to work.
Yeah.
She starts like
Leon or something,
sticking ice picks in people.
Yeah. That'd be great if they suddenly like pulled a adaptation and like the last 20 minutes of the movie it just turns into a fucking dumbass action movie or something like that.
Yeah, well, let's think here. My notes are crazy. Any I don't know. Let's. You know more about the technology of this nonsense. Did the de-aging work for you? It looked a little. I thought it looked great on everyone except De Niro.
Yeah, I was gonna.
De Niro. I think I'm like. So what am I looking at?
One of the reasons why I thought De Niro looked so weird, and I think it was intentional, but he's got blue contacts in or something.
Yes,
the whole
I know,
time.
and I was like, it ruined me. It ruined everything.
There's no reason to do that, and I think like watching it the second time around, I was thinking maybe they were doing that because, De Niro doesn't say that much in the movie. He's a really silent character, and he does a lot of, like, basically silent eye acting, so it really does draw your attention to his eyes, but it really, it's a lot of, like, on top of the de-aging, it really makes a lot of things hard to swallow. Like, the first time you see De Niro de-aged, which is, like, first 5 minutes of the movie, they suddenly flash back to like the 40s, and De Niro is theoretically supposed to be in his 30s driving a truck, and it's in broad daylight, and his eyes look super blue, and it's like a lot to take. I got scared there for a minute.
He's supposed to be like 25, and he looks like he's 50 years old.
Yeah, like that whole scene where they're working on the engine together. Like I was like a little bit like, ooh, man, this is like. Once they start shooting in the dark again, like, I think in general with this de-aging stuff, light is not your friend. Like, as soon as you get lots of scenes in daylight, it looks really fakey, but a lot of the stuff, which is most of the movie, where they're sitting in quiet bars and not moving, it looks a lot better. But yeah, it was a little touch and go. Like, that first 10 minutes of the movie, I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. And then as it went on, like, I didn't really notice it. It still felt a little unnecessary. Pacino, weirdly, I think it just looked great on him because he's got a weird face.
Yeah, I didn't really tell. Yeah, like it didn't really bother me.
It also
Pacino, like I didn't notice it.
It also was funny to me because like de-aging is such a big deal these days, and like normally it's like, let's make Robert Downey Jr. look like he was in Less Than Zero and all these other things, and it's like for all of these actors it's basically like they're old as fuck now, so let's make them look slightly less old as fuck. Like they're still wrinkly, but like they're in their their mid 40s or something. So that's the thing is like I don't think I bought a lot of it, but I never the illusion of the story and the performances was enough to get me into and believe the characters. So the de-aging was, I guess, like a nice like little decoration to hang on it, but like really it was the characters that sold it. Like I think I saw an interview with the cinematographer talking about all of the de-aging and how they had to use like for every one camera there had to be 2 additional reference cameras.
There was like 3 cameras at any given
and then they
time,
would shoot scenes with 3 cameras rolling at once. So like they were saying like one day like Pacino rolled in the set and there were 9 cameras staring at him and he was like, what the fuck? But like it's
and they also didn't use face markers. Like they didn't want to use any sort of face markers on them while they were acting.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it made it equally like harder.
Yeah, I'm sure it was like a pain in the ass for whoever's doing those effects. But like in the end, the DP was saying like, oh hey, I watched the cut of the movie before they added the special effects and it like still worked. So I think like just naturally, like who these actors are and everything, and I think the de-aging works for the effects that they have. You could probably still have done it, if there was less. Like it works for the way they told the story, but you probably could have done it with like younger actors theoretically and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's some scenes where I wish they had just done that because
going back to the war,
I was like, why don't
the brief shot of the 2 German soldiers killing themselves? I was like, just get a young guy. Don't try to do Taxi Driver era De Niro because that's when it looked the fakest. Like the farther from the present.
I don't think it even looked like Taxi Driver. He didn't look thin.
It just looked like
it was weird.
Somebody smeared Vaseline on the model that they were using of De Niro and like made it like, turned the wrinkle slider down a little bit.
But they just took it straight from the book, but there's scenes where like in the early rising up of Frank where he's being introduced a lot. So like Russell will introduce him to someone. He'd be like, here's the kid I was talking about. Here's the kid. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it looks like a 50-year-old man you're introducing as the kid.
The age difference didn't register at all. I guess what is Russell supposed to be like 10, 20 years older than De Niro? Is like...
I think it's supposed to be quite a bit older.
Like that didn't come through at all. That like they always read it as the same. Like I kind of got it. Like I always knew that's what they were portraying, and I guess it came through more in that last segment where they're all in prison together, and you can really see Pesci like aged, and he's got the shaking hands and everything like that. But until then, like I didn't really feel it as much.
That scene was crazy. I was like, where do I sign up?
Yeah, bocce all day, and you get to hang out with your friends.
Yeah, seems great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What a way to go. But it is way because I don't know who was talking about it, but did you notice the color palette kind of changing as the film goes on, where it's almost all color is removed by the end, where it's just bleak and bright and shitty.
I mean that definitely.
And then it's warmer in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's warmer, and then it starts getting weird, more sepia tone in like the 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
The little touches, my friend.
Yeah.
$160 million movie,
Oh wow, that's so. They had a lot of locations and just the amount of stuff that they had in cutaways that like would require like a second unit whole day of filming, like the car explosion when they're talking about like not Joey, the other Joey, and then they cut to a car exploding. That's like a whole day of shooting for somebody. They had so many of those sorts of things, and then there were times that I was kind of wanting to see a few more of those, how they, because they have so many characters, they'll have the little like title cards pop up next to them, saying like, Jimmy.
I like that a lot. I like that how they died when they died.
But like, I almost wish, like, I was gonna say, probably, I assume Scorsese didn't want to do this because he's done it twice already. But like, if it was Goodfellas or Casino, you would probably, because all those characters died like around the same time. So like, they were all.
The best was the guy when Tony Pro gets arrested in Florida at the poker game, and they shut to the guy. He's like. Liked by all,
died
like
happily.
Generally liked by all, died of old age or whatever. It was like, holy shit!
One guy made it out.
How did he do? Yeah, like can I have a book about this guy? Like how was he generally liked by all? You know what I mean?
Man, I mean,
no one was generally liked by all. You know what I mean?
I guess it's like, you have to just be, the goal is not to be the main character in the mob movie. You have to be like the guy in the corner. Don't make a lot of noise, and then like still die happy. That's the path.
I want to be like the oh god damn it, I can never remember his name now. God,
what, like
who was Luciano's partner?
Oh, I have no idea.
No, God.
In the movie?
No, I'm trying to remember.
You're so fucking deep on this stuff, man. Like I'm like, I need to get out my encyclopedia. I need to like sit down, go on Wikipedia for a few hours, because you have clearly been doing your homework on this stuff. I feel like you're about to get assigned.
No, and he's like,
what?
I'm so pissed that I can't remember his name. Meyer Lansky.
Meyer Lansky, okay.
Died rich as hell. Never served. Never was arrested. Never spent a day in prison. Mm-hmm. Died of old age.
May we all be so.
May you all be so lucky as Meyer Lansky.
Yeah.
Unlike Bugsy Siegel and the rest of them,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing though. That's like 1 out of hundreds. Like, just about all of them. Like at the very least, you end up kind of doing like Frank, and you end up in the clink for the last 20 years of your life or something.
Oh, there you go. Frank. I'm trying to go through my nuggets here. I skipped a nugget about Don Rickles, who performed at the Copacabana the night that Joey Gallo got murdered. He was invited to go to Umberto's Clam Shop.
Oh, wow.
And Clam House. And actually, he found an excuse to not go. And had he gone, he likely would have been shot.
Wow. That's crazy.
Don Rickles.
We imagine the life we would have had without Don Rickles.
Oh, yeah.
Toy Story would be totally different.
Zigged when you should have zagged type moments.
Well, hey, wasn't there something, because I thought I read something where they're also talking about minor differences between the movie and the book or real life, but wasn't so the guy that they kill because they thought he was talking to the FBI, but it turned out he wasn't, and the guy Sally Bugs. Okay, so didn't they actually kill Sally Bugs in front of Umberto's as well? And for some reason, it's not like that in the movie. Or I thought I saw them say something where it's like the very same clam shop where they killed Crazy Joe. And it was Frank doing the killing again. But I don't know. Maybe I need to check my sources or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I don't know. I mean, it's a good a place as any to kill him.
Yeah.
You got to go where they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Umberto's Clam Shop should start leading into that. Like, come eat some clams, maybe you'll see a show.
I don't think it's in the same location anymore. But the owner of Umberto's is like famously, like, please, like, don't use this as like.
Please don't kill people in our venue.
Well, he was like, a man died.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this shouldn't be like a place on a tour that you come and see and you take photos. True. You know what I mean? He's like, he's not jazzed about it. He's not steering into it. He's
That's good. I mean, that is the decent thing to do.
Yeah, incredibly decent. Very, very not on brand for Little Italy. I don't know if you've ever been.
Yeah.
It's like traveling into a cartoon.
Yeah. Everybody, every corner somebody got shot. So let's do a tour.
Yeah, I mean, Little Italy. When I was living in New York, Little Italy is like it's like going to Universal Studios or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like
You feel like you're
it's
on a
the
lot at a movie instead of
oh,
actually at
it's
a
instant.
place.
Yeah. You're like, this is just the weirdest. It's like half street market slash, just stalls selling like Italian flags and bullshit and pastries and pizza. Pardon me.
Statue of David
But,
boxers and stuff.
Oh, just it's all just insane. I'm sure Little Lily was nice, when it was, before it was a cartoon character, you know what I mean? But now it's now it's just a little.
Yeah, try getting an apartment there now for the same price that they had back in the '60s.
I'm trying to think of anything else I had. I mean, I jotted down a bunch of little. Oddly enough, it's like we could do a freaking Godfather version of this. You know what I mean? Where like
talking about like Meyer Lansky and all that, the Cuba stuff.
Yeah, no, like just. Like James Caan was friends with a bunch of the mobsters. He actually like posted bail for one of the Colombo crime family guys. This guy named Andy Mush Russo. Brando got speech lessons from Joe Buffalino.
Oh wow.
Colombo, forced the producers to make certain casting decisions, and they got Coppola actually cast Lenny Montana, who's a former wrestler, as Luca Brasi. After he came to set as the bodyguard of Joe Colombo.
Really? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That makes sense. He's like so not actory in that movie. Like...
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's why. Because he is an actual mob bodyguard. And then Brando modeled his speech after mob boss Frank Costello, who we saw testifying on TV one time. So Frank Costello was kind of part of the original group of four of Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano,
like the big families,
and so they were their own little gang. The Luciano family started as Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, and Frank Costello. They were like a group of four, and then they rose to power after they killed like Mazzaria and Fat Joe.
Can't forget about
they kind of find. So they kind of created the I can't remember, is it called the conference or I can't remember what they call it, but basically they tied in Al Capone for the Chicago outfit, you know what I mean, so that they became kind of a
nationwide
democracy
kind of mob government.
Yeah, so they became, what's crazy is what's fascinating about the five families and stuff is like you can go see the whole history of the five families, like who's still in charge, like who's the current leader of this, family and stuff. And like, you think the shit is kind of past us, but really it's not. You know what I mean? Like, there's still a guy that's in charge of like the Genovese family. You know what I mean? That's what's crazy. Like, this is still
it can still go on with so much like publicity. So much of the mob past has been thrown into the limelight, and isn't that like one of the things contributing? Like, they keep on saying like the mob's heyday is over because like the younger generations treat it almost like being a celebrity, or don't have the same. There's no like code or anything like that.
Well, yeah. Speaking of the code, the Genovese family that started as Lucky Luciano's family. Apparently, it was so brutal that they've only had 8 members ever testify against them in history. Omerta, my friend.
Do most of those members suddenly disappear or anything like that?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, after their unspeakable things happen to them. You know what I mean? Just little tidbits. You know what I mean? Just try to jot down little things like that. But apparently, they're like, it's interesting because there's, the five families, but they're like, one's, one hates this one is, they're the, one is the Ivy League. I think it's the Genovese family, but they're like considered like the snootier, like high end mafia family, where they're more into like, tech crime and stealing identities and like gambling over, like they're smarter apparently
they change with the times, bigger picture
Yes,
stuff,
exactly.
everything
Yeah.
like that.
So I'm sure they're just into getting vapes and sports gambling and shit like that. You know what I mean? I assume that's just all criminal enterprise. So
That would make sense. I mean, vapes seem like a criminal enterprise if I ever
oh,
had to
absolutely.
guess.
I don't want to say anything. I don't want to name any companies or whatever. But I assume it's just all you know all ties back to the Gambino family or whatnot.
Yeah.
But well, there you go. You got any other comments? You got any concerns? Yeah, what do you think of the movie? You like?
Yeah, I mean, like that's pretty much like this has all been like really fascinating because like I'm learning so much just listening to you. And it's fascinating too because it's like not in the text of the movie at all. So this really could have been something that they expanded more on. But like I liked it. Like I wouldn't call it my favorite Scorsese movie of all time, but I liked it a lot, and I'm glad that I watched it twice because I really feel like
that's incredible feeling.
Yeah, I really like. I was kind of wondering if I should, but I think I've had this problem this whole year where like I go see a movie that has been hyped up a lot, and even if I try to tamper my expectations, I kind of am always like picking it apart, and I can't like let the movie breathe on its own. So kind of like watching it the first time, getting used to the de-aging, getting used to the pacing, and like honestly just taking in all the information because there's so many characters and having no background on anything, and like suddenly becoming aware of how little I knew about Jimmy Hoffa and all of that stuff. Like the second time around, like I was able to take the information in a lot easier and enjoy the ride of the movie. There's some really great performances, and it's just nice in general to see these actors who are so great, like act in something of merit again, because like a lot of them have been kind of slumming it lately or just not there.
You didn't like Hot Grandfather, whatever. What was it? Horny Grandfather.
Yeah.
What was it? Bad Grandpa.
Yeah, Bad Grandpa. I think just anything where De Niro. I don't know. Like I love De Niro, but like most of his movies from the last 10 years have been not great, or he's kind of become a parody of himself. So it was nice to see him like he's still a tough guy, like like it. So it was nice to see him get back in that pocket. But like really, especially it was Pacino and Pesci for me. They were the MVPs for sure, and it's just great to see Scorsese. Like I love the dude. I think he's a national treasure that everyone should appreciate. Because dude's old, and like I love that he's still so dedicated to his craft and keeps on trying to push the boundaries and make every movie different. So I really appreciated him for that. I'll have to see how I think of this movie like years later, but I'd say I enjoyed it. And let's see, looking at my notes, I think I think it almost seems like it might be like a live, die, repeat situation because, like, I thought it was interesting that the title card for the movie was I Heard You Paint Houses instead of The Irishman. Like, it seemed like Netflix was like, hey, just call it The Irishman, and, you don't even have to put it in the movie. It's just a more marketable name because it really felt like a misnomer. Like, it really doesn't... I was almost like, oh, is this another Irish mob movie? Or I kind of didn't know what to expect from that, and I thought I Heard You Paint Houses was a way better title, and I'm glad that he kind of just left that title card in as it was in the movie because I love the way it comes on with the roadway shots. Another scene I loved was the car bomb scene, the scene where somebody's wife. Hoffa's wife?
Yeah, Hoffa's wife, yeah.
Like the whole tension of her like turning it and like cutting to the earlier car bomb. That's the sort of like Scorsese editing that I love, and I don't think this movie had as much of that. Like, I think if they trimmed out like a half an hour, it could have had a little bit more of that energy, but it still had a lot of those juicy Scorsese nuggets. And then I think I heard one other thing. Like, the one thing about the movie is I think they kind of established they never actually show the guy that wrote the book in the movie, but it's kind of almost implied that you're viewing the movie from his perspective because the movie's kind of bookended with the camera going into this retirement home, and you get to meet Frank like when he's really, really old, and he's almost talking to you like he was the author. But I heard that an earlier draft of the movie was supposed to start out with the author talking to an old Frank while he's on his deathbed, and apparently that's where the author had Frank kind of confess to a camera, basically say on camera he stands by all of the stories that he said, and to give the book a little bit more merit, I think. And the way they wrote it in the screenplay was basically the author's like, okay, so all you have to do is confirm that everything you said was true, and Frank just kind of stares off in the distance and he does not confirm. So it almost would give it a little bit more of a, the movie doesn't leave as much hey, this might be an unreliable narrator in the text of the movie. Like it's there, but it's not really like stressed a little bit. And I think that might have actually added a little bit to the movie, is to give it a little flavor of like, okay, this movie's crazy, it has a huge scope, but maybe the guy telling, like a Big Fish thing, like maybe the guy telling it is embellishing a little or something. But so all in all, I liked it. It's good to see all those actors back in their old game, and yeah, I just hope Scorsese keeps making movies.
Where did you kind of rank it, like among? Did you like it better? To me, I think it's like Goodfellas. There's
Goodfellas,
there's kind of the Italian mob, Casino,
basically any of the De Niro's.
Like, where do you rank it? It's kind of I love Casino and Goodfellas more than this film.
Agree. It's more fun.
I love some of his other films, like Gangs of New York or Wolf of Wall Street, above those. Kind of even some of the monster.
Yeah, I agree. Like this is probably like high middle for me, because.
Is it better than Hugo?
I liked Hugo, but yes, it is better than Hugo.
Is Silence or Hugo the worst?
So I've only seen the first 20 minutes of Silence, and I don't think I've ever seen a Scorsese movie that I haven't liked. I keep on hearing that Kundun, the one he did about the Dalai Lama, that's supposed to be his hardest one to get through. Because it's so random.
I thought Silence would be, because Silence was like a movie he wanted to make for like 20 years.
Yeah, and nobody wanted to finance it because they knew that. And
it sounds like they were.
Yeah, it did not seem like it made a bunch of money, but that was pretty much the same case for Kundun. I think he always saves those projects. Like he did Silence right after The Wolf of Wall Street, so you do your weird project that no one's going to finance right after you had your most success, because it's not going to happen. And then he's like, okay, now I'll make a Netflix mafia movie. That's going to be a surefire hit. Like, he knows how to do it, right? And then it sounds like he's just doing DiCaprio movies for the rest of his career now, right? Like it's
oh, you could do worse.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty DiCaprio and De Niro being in the same movie for the next one. That sounds interesting, and I'd be really interested to see. God, I hope he's going to be healthy and long for this world for a while. But he's supposed to make Devil in the White City after that, and that sounds like it would be really in his wheelhouse and pretty interesting. And
that's a book,
yeah,
right?
It's basically about this guy that was a serial killer. Another based on a true story. This guy was a serial killer at the 1912.
Is this the H.H. Holmes story?
Yeah, H.H. Holmes. Yeah, the guy at the World's Fair that killed over 100 people and nobody ever knew. And so DiCaprio is supposed to be playing Holmes, and so I think that would be like.
And they kind of like American Horror Story, like the American Horror Story hotel was shittily based off of kind of that concept.
Yeah, like it's just like the guy was a doctor that had a whole warehouse full of evil
secret passageways and torture rooms and all kinds of shit.
Unsuspecting victims, like thousands upon thousands of people from all across the country coming just easily into his hands.
Oh boy, gee willikers, can't wait to go to the World's Fair.
Oh, what's that? You just got in on a train from outside of town and no one knows you're here? Well, here, sure.
Where am I, mister?
Yeah.
Why am I tied to this wall, mister?
Yeah. So the movie would basically be a lot of that. But I think it would be like kind of like, you know, a nice meshing of like a horror movie with like some of the almost Gangs of New York-y, you know, or maybe I guess closer to Hugo, honestly. But yeah, like early 1900s.
I'm sure it'll have similar vibes to Hugo.
Yeah, yeah, you know, just Hugo with a lot more disembowelings, you know. That's what that movie needed.
That's how he pitched it.
But in any case, I'm always interested in everything Scorsese does. Like, literally, like, even the worst movie he's ever done is still better than most people's best movies. And he's the fact that the guy has been as prolific as he has been and just keeps up the pace that he does is impressive. So, more power to him, you know.
Well, there you go. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I agree. Moving on. The man is a masterpiece. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we're hoping for many more years. Keep working, Marty.
Yeah, keep it up.
We love you, and I don't care if you hate the Marvel movies.
Yeah, nerds, lay off them.
Someone has to say it, bro.
You're speaking the truth. I love Marvel movies and everything, but yeah, like defend movies.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Thank you guys so much for listening to our ranting and ramblings. And, you know, I just hope that you guys kind of, all we want is for you to kind of get something that you wouldn't have ordinarily kind of gotten from maybe just seeing the movie. You know what I mean? Just getting some tidbits. Maybe it piques your interest enough for you to go grab that book and give it a read, see what you think. And just as a way to kind of gain more knowledge so you can kind of pilfer it and take what you want and you know, talk in a parking lot amongst your friends and throw in some tidbits and some things like that. That's really kind of what we want. But thank you guys so much for listening, as always. You know, please like, share, subscribe. We appreciate it. Leave us a comment if you like it. Let us know if there's something coming out you're especially interested in, you want us to take a look at. I've been lazy as hell the last couple of weeks. I've been a little sick, been crazy at work. Haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari. Haven't seen... The Report, haven't seen Marriage Story, haven't seen the goddamn Mr. Rogers movie. You name it, I haven't seen it. Haven't seen Frozen 2.
Oh, David, come on now.
I know. So we may rely on Ash for that coverage, but if there's something coming out, I heard there's a Star Wars movie coming out in a matter of days at some point. I may squeak in some time to see that, but we don't know. We'll probably have something on that. Are you going to see Star Wars?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I'll see it. I'll probably... I was going to say I don't know if I'll see it like opening weekend, but I'll probably... If I can squeeze it in without it being too big of a pain in the ass, then yeah.
Well, there you go. So if Mr. Volpe can find some time, you know, I'm going to see it Thursday night like an absolute psychopath because there's no other way for me to live. So, you know, I'll probably... By the time Volpe sees it, I'll have calmed down, and then we can talk about it.
Ranted about it on the internet, and then saw it again.
Oh, no. I saved my rantings, my friend.
Okay. Yes,
you know
bottle your rage. That's the best podcast material.
I think I'm averaging one tweet a month.
Okay, good for you. Like that's healthy.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, I know.
I wish everybody was like that.
Oh, me too. It's Twitter's a toxic wasteland of absolute insanity. Not like the YouTube comments, which are
totally
great.
Different. It's the best thing for you, YouTube.
Love you guys in the YouTube comments. Really appreciate it. So anyway, thank you guys so much again. Like, share, subscribe. Find us at thedisorderly.com. We really appreciate all the support. We're trying to build a little bit of a base that you guys can kind of rely on and enjoy some of the, you know, different stuff like that. Check out Nick's doing his weekly recaps episode by episode of The Watchmen. We may do a little Mandalorian recap or something like that. I wanted to let it go a few episodes and then maybe we can get into that. So maybe if we have some time, we'll kind of get into that. But thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys. Woo! And we're out.